Slow motion with the Canon 90D and the Canon EOS R, not bad at all. What's up guys, Dan Frulani here and welcome back to a new video. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing, if not just hit the like button. Well, what do I talk about today? Slow motion with the Canon 90D and the Canon EOS R. Let's start from the beginning. When we normally shoot a video, we tend to shoot in 30 or 24 frames per second. If you want it to look cinematic, 24 is the way to go. What happens when we want to shoot in slow motion? I know that many of us, most of us at some point when we were beginners, we tried at least once. We took some footage that we shot in 24 frames per second, put it in our software on the computer and slowed it down. And that didn't look good. Why? Well, 24 frames per second means that in 1 second there are 24 images. In a video, when we play and it's 24 frames per second, we don't perceive that as 24 images per second stitched together, but rather like a smooth movement, because 24 frames per second is the minimum amount of frames per second that we perceive as smooth, natural movement. So if we slow it down, we don't have enough frames and the video looks like choppy and jittery, really bad. So what do we need to do if we want slow motion? We need to shoot at least in 60 frames per second so that we can slow it down in post. Or if our camera can do that, we can shoot in 120 frames per second or more. The more frames we have when we shoot a video, the more we can slow it down without making it look like choppy and ridiculously jittery. So let's say we want to shoot good slow motion with the Canon 90D. Here it is. We make sure we select the video mode here, turn it on, we click menu, then on the first tab, movie rec quality, and we have a few options there. We click on high frame rate, enable, and then we go on the live screen. So now we'll be shooting 120 frames per second. We see that the shutter speed is set automatically at 1/125th of a second. But being at 120 frames per second, in order to get the most natural motion blur, we need to set it at double the frame rate. So 120 frames per second. Let's do 250, 1/250th shutter speed, and you're good to go. There's to say, when we shoot 120 frames per second on the Canon 90D, it's in 1080p, not 720, but we lose the dual pixel autofocus, also any kind of autofocus. We lose the audio stabilization, we lose a lot. But the big deal, the ability to focus. When we are about to shoot 120 frames per second on the Canon 90D, we can focus on our subject, but as soon as we press the rec button, the focus is gonna stay there. If you move away from the subject or closer to the subject, it'll be out of focus. If also the subject is moving, well, that would make it really difficult to get a good shot. But it's doable anyway. I do it all the time. If you do not want to shoot 120 frames per second because you lose the autofocus or for some other reasons, the audio or whatever reason, you can shoot 60 frames per second. So again, you click menu, movie rec quality, then since we were shooting high frame rate, you have to disable that. And attention, because when you disable the high frame rate, the 120 frames per second on the Canon 90D, but also on the EOS R and on the M50, according to my own experience, it sets automatically at 60 frames per second. In this case, it's not a problem because I wanted to show you that. So it's 60 frames per second. Now, since we're shooting 60 frames per second, we have to set the correct shutter speed. 60 and 60, 120. So we set it to 125, close enough. And this way, we're able to get a pretty good slow motion. but it's not like when we shoot 120 frames per second. Meaning, when we shoot 120 frames per second, the file you get is already a slow motion, good to go, free to use it for whatever you want. You don't need to slow it down, it's already slow. But for what concerns 60 frames per second, the file will play real-time speed. That means that you have to slow it down in post. And can you just slow it down like that? Well, you have to make sure that the software you're using, like Premiere Pro, Resolve, or others, that the software you use can do that. Meaning, for example, if you want to use the slow motion in a 24 frames per second timeline, you have to import it. Before putting it on the timeline, you should conform it to 24 frames per second so that it will play slower and smooth. And here it is what it looks like. This was for the Canon 90D. What about the EOS R? Well, I'm gonna show you. So as you've seen, with both cameras you can get good slow motion. Just you have to figure out if your priority is the autofocus, the sharpness, definition, details, the sound. Like, can you deal with 720p or you must have 1080? And again, is the 1080 of the Canon 90D good enough for you without autofocus, without sound? The lack of sound in slow motion for me is not a big deal. The lack of autofocus sometimes might be a drawback. Is 60 frames per second good enough for you? You want it or you need it slower? And again, for the Canon EOS R, you have to deal with 720p if you want 120 frames per second. And also, you lose the autofocus, the sound, and everything, like stabilization, everything. Is 60 frames per second good enough for you? My conclusions: when I watch a video, when I watch a film or whatever, and I see a good scene, that might be a B-roll, that might be a, I don't know, a commercial or anything, I don't think, oh, wait a minute, that's not 120 frames per second. So it depends what we shoot, it depends how we shoot, the emotion, the feeling we give with our video. So in my opinion, it's good that we have more than one option to do slow motion, but for me, whether I have to shoot 720p to get 120 frames per second or 60 frames per second and it's not that slow, it doesn't really matter. I just try to make things do with the options I have. And believe me, they're not bad at all. Even if some of you might say, oh my god, 720p for 120 frames per second, or oh my god, 60 frames per second is not really a slow motion. I don't worry too much about it. So let me know what you think about it and leave a comment down below and smash the like button. Check the links in the description also to see all my gear stuff and things, my gear. And check the links to Epidemic Sound if you want 1 month of awesome songs to use in your videos for free. Well, I guess that's it for today. I really hope you can make some awesome slow motion with whatever camera you have, either the Canon 90D or the Canon EOS R or even the Canon M50 or whatever camera. And let me know what your preferences are in terms of slow motion. So I guess I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. And smash it. So let me know what you think about it and leave a comment down below and smash the like button.